Welcome to the Explainer. Okay, today we are taking on a serious mission. We're diving straight into the $850 GTA 6 tactical blueprint. Basically, this is your complete step-by-step guide to beating those absolutely terrifying hardware costs without, totally emptying your bank account.
So, the calendar is officially flipped to February 2026, and let's be real, the panic is definitely setting in. Are you doomed to just watch GTA 6 on YouTube? Because when you look at that flagship RTX 5090 price tag, which literally costs more than some college tuition, the sheer terror of being left behind is very real. You're probably wondering, am I going to be stuck watching my favorite streamers play while I just sit on the sidelines? But let me tell you right now, absolutely not. High-end gaming is definitely not just for the ultra-wealthy.
Our entire philosophy for this explainer really boils down to one idea. This isn't just a cheap PC. Think of it as a calculated strike against those insanely inflated system requirements. We're not just throwing money around hoping for the best. Instead, we're putting together a highly specific $850 budget warrior build. It's all about surgical precision, guys. We're choosing smart, hyper-efficient components rather than relying on raw, ridiculously expensive horsepower just to brute force the game. We are going to squeeze every single ounce of performance out of every last dollar.
Okay, let's dive into this massive paradigm shift, because before we spend a single dime, we've got to understand the software we're actually trying to run here. Rockstar has completely rebuilt their proprietary engine, Rage 9. Now, older games, they were mostly GPU heavy. You just needed a really beefy graphics card and you were good to go. But GTA 6 is a whole different beast. It introduces advanced real-time fluid physics and, get this, a massive jump from 50 NPCs to up to 300 NPCs in a single area. And all of those characters have their own complex AI routines. That demands some serious CPU and RAM power. If you go out and buy a $500 graphics card, but pair it with a weak processor, the game is going to violently stutter every single time you drive into a crowded Vice City intersection. Nobody wants that. So, to survive these crazy demands on a student budget, we have to follow what I call the golden rule of 2026. Target 1080p resolution and heavily leverage AI upscaling technologies. We need a bit of a reality check right here. Attempting to run native 4K resolution on a budget is quite frankly financial suicide. It's just a performance disaster waiting to happen. Look, the elites can fight over 8K resolution all they want. We are going to execute a tactical pivot straight to 1080p, and we're going to use AI to make it look absolutely incredible.
And that AI magic, that comes from our secret weapon, DLSS 4.0. Let's break down the tech jargon for a second. Deep learning supersampling is NVIDIA's AI-powered technology. Here's how it works in really simple terms. The game actually renders at a much lower, way less demanding resolution, something like 720p. Then the AI steps in and magically transforms that image to output a crisp, super sharp 1080p, while simultaneously adding in frame generation. The result? You literally get double the frame rate without any noticeable loss in visual quality. It is basically the ultimate budget cheat code. Now let's get into the CPU battle. We basically have two logical paths here. The Intel Core i3-15100F at $115, or the AMD Ryzen 5 7600 coming in at $180. The AMD is a total powerhouse, yes, it gives you 6 cores instead of 4, but now what's really interesting about this is that the performance data tells a very specific story. That more expensive AMD chip only delivers about 5 to 7 more frames per second in GTA 6. So, by picking the highly efficient 4-core Intel processor, we instantly save $65. And, on a strict student budget, we are taking that $65 and dumping it straight into our graphics card budget, where it will actually buy us 20 to 30 extra frames. That's just smart math.
Which leads us directly to the real engine of our build. The $299 NVIDIA RTX 5050 is going head-to-head with the AMD Radeon RX 9600. Now, AMD offers 10 gigabytes of VRAM, which, looks fantastic on paper for older games. But NVIDIA completely wins the GTA 6 battle, and here is exactly why. Rockstar's new engine relies heavily on ray tracing for those ultra-realistic water reflections and dynamic shadows. And right now, AMD is just a few generations behind in this specific technology. Plus, you get that unmatched image quality of DLSS 4.0 that we just talked about. If you have any doubts at all, the raw numbers completely prove the DLSS 4.0 multiplier effect. Without AI, the RTX 5050 gives you about 60 real solid frames. Not bad. But with frame generation turned on, it turns those 60 real frames into well over 100 perceived frames. It's essentially generating brand new frames out of thin air just to smooth out your gameplay. This technology is exactly what allows a $299 budget card to punch 2 full tiers above its weight class. I'm telling you, it fundamentally changes the entire budget GPU landscape.
So the absolutely crucial point here is making sure we don't bottleneck that amazing graphics card. We have to escape some massive hardware traps. First off, 16 gigabytes of RAM. That's a total trap in 2026. Windows 12 is going to eat 4 gigabytes the second you boot your PC, and GTA 6 needs about 12 gigabytes just for itself. If you only have 16, your game will stutter. You absolutely 100% need 32 gigabytes of DDR5. Second trap, a Gen 4 NVMe SSD is mandatory. GTA 6 uses Microsoft's direct storage to read assets straight from the drive. A Gen 4 drive totally eliminates those agonizing 60-second load times and stops textures from randomly popping in while you're driving down the highway. Seriously, do not buy a Gen 3 drive.
All right, here it is, the complete tactical loadout. I highly recommend taking a quick screenshot right now. We've got our Intel i3 processor, an ASRock DDR5 motherboard, 32 gigs of that crucial RAM, our Gen 4 SSD, a super reliable 600-watt power supply, a clean mesh case, and the Zotac RTX 5050. This definitively proves that a highly capable next-generation machine can be built for just over $800, specifically an incredible $804 for the tower. We are literally hitting all of our tactical targets right on the nose.
But of course, you actually need a screen to play it on. And I really need you to internalize what I call the pixel rule. Buying a 1440p or 4K monitor for this specific $800 build, it's literally like putting cheap gas in a Ferrari. It is a massive mistake that will instantly have your frame rates. Remember, the RTX 5050 is a 1080p card. Your absolute sweet spot is a 24-inch, 165Hz IPS 1080p monitor. You can easily find these online for around $110 to $130 right now. And that 165Hz refresh rate, that ensures you can actually see all those extra AI-generated frames we worked so hard to get.
Okay, now let's talk about some insider secrets. Where can we cut costs without losing a single frame of performance? First, skip those crazy expensive tempered glass cases with all the RGB lights. A $55 mesh front case gives you perfect airflow, which is all that matters. Second, just use the perfectly safe stock cooler that comes free right in the Intel processor box. You really don't need fancy liquid cooling for this setup. Third, use the free version of Windows 12. Microsoft literally lets you use it legally with just a tiny watermark in the corner, and boom, you just saved $140. Finally, treat assembly like Lego. Building a PC yourself is incredibly simple today. The connectors are physically mistake-proof, and doing it yourself instantly pockets you a $60 assembly fee.
So, what does all this careful, meticulous planning actually get us? Well, let's walk through the real-world performance numbers. No, it's not going to do 4K path tracing, but just look at these 1080p results. We are hitting a very comfortable 65 frames per second on medium-high settings in GTA 6. In Call of Duty Black Ops 7, we are blazing up to 145 FPS for super competitive play, and Cyberpunk 2077 runs beautifully smooth at 58 FPS on high. For an $800 investment, this isn't just a basic budget PC. It is a certified 1080p powerhouse.
Let's look ahead for a second and see how this actually builds your future. Because the true beauty of a PC is modularity. Since we chose the brand new LGA 1851 motherboard, this PC is a modular investment. Think of it like this. In Stage 1, maybe next year, you could easily drop in a better GPU. In Stage 2, around 2028, you can upgrade your processor without even changing the motherboard or the RAM. And then in Stage 3, you can bump up the memory. You aren't throwing the whole machine away when it gets old, you are literally just swapping out the engine. It's brilliant.
Now, I know exactly what the hardcore console defenders are thinking right now, but a PS5 Pro is only $600. Okay, let's drop the financial mic for a second and look at the true, actual 3-year cost here. Yes, a PS5 Pro is $600 up front, but Sony charges an $80 yearly online subscription just so you can play with your friends. Over 3 years, that's $240. On top of that, console games are generally much more expensive, averaging about $70 each. Buy 10 games, boom, that's $700. Add it all up, and your so-called $600 console actually drains about $1,540 out of your wallet over 3 years.
And this brilliantly illustrates our ultimate victory. Our completely modular, highly upgradable PC comes in at just $1,530 over that exact same 3-year period. How is that even possible? Well, because PC multiplayer is completely free. There are 0 yearly subscription fees. Plus, PC games are routinely cheaper with massive Steam sales averaging around $40 a game. So even factoring in a future graphics card upgrade in year 2, the PC actually costs less overall. Crazy, right?
To summarize our final verdict, just consider the massive advantages you get for that identical long-term cost. Free multiplayer, cheaper games, incredible mod support that literally keeps games alive for decades. Plus, guys, it's a full computer. You can do your homework, edit videos, run Discord, and multitask like a pro. Taking the time for that initial investment in PC building knowledge, like learning what RAM to buy or just figuring out how to screw in a motherboard, it pays massive dividends in long-term value, raw performance, and ultimate gaming freedom.
Which leaves us with one final, pretty provocative question. In 2026, with the single biggest game release of our lifetime staring us down, what is your next step going to be? Are you going to settle for a closed-box console that traps you in endless subscription fees? Or are you going to use this blueprint, take full control of your hardware, and build your own personal gateway to Vice City? The choice is completely yours, but I know which tactical path I'm taking for sure. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and happy building.